All right, can I have everyone's attention, please, because we're about to begin. So it is October 22, and the meeting of the WSESD will come to order. This meeting is a hybrid meeting, which means that some or all of the public body is meeting remotely and some are meeting physically in a previously noticed location where the public may attend to observe, listen, and participate contemporaneously. Please note that while we will strive to provide means for those attending remotely to participate in the public comment period, there may be technical difficulties or reasons that otherwise prevent or interrupt remote public participation. If there is a problem, we're asking everyone to reach out to someone in this space via email. We will do our very best to keep you connected. In the event of ongoing technical problems, this meeting will continue. Thank you. So I just want to focus on a couple of points on the agenda. The first one on the agenda says, if appropriate, agenda items are subject to potential action. So just letting you know, on the agenda, it is not saying potential action or action required. The assumption is if it's on the agenda, there is the possibility of action. The second item, if any board member feels that an item on the consent agenda warrants discussion, that item will be removed from the consent agenda and will be set aside for discussion. In this way, the consent agenda will be approved in one motion. That request should be made now or before the vote on the consent agenda. All right. And are there any amendments to the agenda as written?
Yes. Amendment, but just the possibility of a change to move the fiscal report up on the agenda.
I don't quite know where I'm going to move it. We have a presentation tonight that is on the agenda. I understand your concern, Sean. You and I are in communication. Let's hold it for the next meeting, please. And let's just keep the agenda as is.
Sure. With my communication with Frank, I'm not sure he'll be available.
Can you talk a little louder?
Yes, with my communication with Frank, I'm not sure he'll be available after 8 o'clock.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Thank you. We will do our best to move this along quickly. I'm not, based upon that last communication, I'm not sure that there is any report coming from Frank Rucker this evening. So we will do our very best. I do have an amendment to the agenda, and that's regarding, it's under consent agenda, approval of minutes from October 8th, 2024, which is great. I think we also need to approve minutes from October 7, the night before. Those were not approved on the 8th. What was approved on the 8th are the minutes of September 24. So I want to make sure that we do both of those agendas, okay? Anybody else for changes to the agenda? And thank you, Sean, for that remark about the agenda. We will move this along. Okay. So we're going to begin with student matters. Approximately 10 minutes. If any students online or in person wish to make a comment, this is the time to do it. Liva, yes.
Hello everyone, I'm Liva. So I wanted to, and I don't know if we're going to talk about the SAC meetings. I think
we are. It is on the agenda.
It's on the agenda that
yes.
we'll talk. But the student matter that I wanted to highlight was just regarding bridging the gap between admin and students. And it was just a little more about trying to, like what we talked about in the SAC meetings. So I guess we will talk about that and that, but a little follow-up on the last, issues last time that I brought up. That would be, I wanted to understand, I guess, more of how, like I could, because people told me that I could reach out to people to talk about, the immigrant stuff, but I'm confused as to, is the board okay with that, or?
I think the board is more than okay with it, but I think that is something that, so when you talk about reaching out to students, are you talking on the high school level? Okay,
Yes.
so I'm going to suggest that you send an email, even though we're in this space right now, but it's in the evening. And just as a reminder, would you send an email directly to Hannah Parker?
Yes.
Does that make sense? Yes. Okay. And then we'll take it from there.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you for following up on that. We don't want to lose sight of issues as they come up. Thank you. So keep us posted on how things go with that. Any other students in the space? Okay, I don't see any hands. So I am going to move on to public comment on non-agenda items. This is a time for the board to listen and to take notes. It is not a time for the board to respond to comments or to engage in dialogue with the public. If appropriate, the board and administration will work on next steps. So this is time for public to comment on non-agenda items. Yes, Martha, would you identify yourself by name and your town, please?
Hello again and good evening. My name is Martha Noyce and I'm a homeowner and resident here in Brattleboro. I am here this evening to again ask the board members, various committees, superintendent, principals, and any who may be attending remotely to address trimming, cutting, leveling the schools' budgets. What efforts are you putting forth to show compromise? What efforts are you putting forth to show consolidation? Are you really being creative with various positions? When there is a proposal made to you for an additional and unanticipated expenditure or for an additional position, have you talked amongst yourselves and truly brainstormed about compromise, consolidation, being creative, or said the hard words, no, we can't do this? What efforts are you putting forth to present to the residents and the taxpayers a more lean school budget? Thank you.
Thank you, Martha. And thank you, as I said to you in the hallway, thank you for keeping this front and center always. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So again, this is public comment on non-agenda items. Is there anyone else in the public who would like to speak at this time? Okay, we'll give it a few more seconds. I don't see any hands. All right, we are going to move on to board matters. The first item on the agenda is Leadership Council updates. And if you notice on the agenda, there is time to talk about proposed Leadership Council members, so we'll hold off on that. But any updates on Leadership Council? Mark?
I can share that last week we had our Leadership Council orientation. We had about 5 schools represented at central office. Met with myself and Mo Hart. We went through a basic slide deck, going over the details of leadership councils, where they came from, how they're organized, all the logistics was really good. And then we just opened it up for very informal, just opportunities for leadership council members to share the things that they're working on in their school communities. And I thought that was probably the most fruitful part of the orientation, having that time to connect with each other. At the close of the meeting, I posed a question of whether this would be helpful to do again in the winter. And the sentiment was yes. So the idea that group came up with collectively was that at some point midwinter, February, March, we would put together a leadership council summit for all leadership council members who are available, including board members and administrators. So don't have the total clear vision of what that looks like yet. But we're really leaning towards the informal opportunities to connect with each other and share what's happening at our different school sites.
Just as a follow-up question, you mentioned 5 schools were present. So we have another 5 schools, and I'm wondering how those leadership councils are being brought into the fold.
Yeah, there were some folks who had to cancel last minute, unfortunately, due to other things that came up. I don't think we actually took formal minutes at that meeting. But once we have our new membership in place after the announcements tonight, Mo will be reaching out and sharing the PowerPoint with all members of leadership councils that we did present on the 16th.
That's great. Is it possible for us as board members to see that PowerPoint? That might be helpful.
Sure. Yep.
Okay. Tim, I saw your hand.
Yeah, so at the last board meeting, I brought up a concern that was raised at the BAMS Leadership Council about the dangerous situation for students on Atwood Avenue, with buses going so close to students walking along there. So I brought this up again at the Oak Grove Leadership Council meeting last night. And Mary Kaufman related a story that when she was principal at BUHS, she actually witnessed a bus hit the child. The child turned out to be okay. I mean, but it's a dangerous situation. So my question is, has there been follow-up with the Brattleboro Select Board or any kind of follow-up to that situation?
That Mary was referring to?
No, that the situation at Atwood that the BAMS leadership parent brought up.
No formal follow-up.
I can say I came from a dentist appointment this morning, so I was a little late getting here, and it was right around the time it was really busy. And there was 2 crossing guards at that intersection, each of them responsible for the separate crosswalks. And I don't know if that's a change or not, but
That is a change.
it definitely looked like it was very well managed. And they were stopping cars to allow other cars to get out in addition to crossing students, I think, to try to have some
that change was initiated last winter.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it felt like it was very well managed in that intersection this morning.
But yeah, that's good. But the real danger is buses driving along Atwood with kids, groups of kids walking right alongside the buses.
Gotcha. And actually, I remember the town last year at a meeting we had getting ready for the winter snow stuff. They said that they were going to be putting sidewalks on that other side. That area I could see being dangerous. And I don't know whatever happened to that because they didn't extend that sidewalk this summer. But
yeah, if I can just,
interesting thing to look into.
if there's any more follow-up, I'd appreciate it so I can pass it on to the parent.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Tim.
One more. It's a leadership. Well, at Oak Grove, I passed on an announcement from CPAC, the Special Education Parents Advisory Group. And I'll let everybody know here that tomorrow night, there's a big event at Academy School. It's called Unpacking Special Education. It's from 5:30 to 7 o'clock. And it's a group that will answer any and every question you might have about IEPs, about special education. So 5:30 to 7 tomorrow night at Academy. Please pass the word on.
Thank you. Thank you. Online, Colleen Savage, board member.
Hello. I just had a little update from Academy Schools Leadership Council. They wanted to share that they had a high participation in Leadership Council and the PTO, and that they were really happy to have more people joining them. And also they have no plans to cut any positions. I note that they didn't cut positions last year, and we have resources that our kids need. So.
Thank you, Colleen. Mary Kaufman, principal, Oak Grove.
Hi, yes, I just wanted to clarify it was not a bus that ran into a student. It was a car.
It was a passenger car.
It was, yeah. And this was a long time ago, back when I worked at the high school. So
well, that's so much better.
Still not great, but it was not a bus. The buses were fine.
Okay.
And I also see that Liz Strong has her hand up. So I'm not sure what she's going to say also for
I was going to offer the same clarification.
Okay.
I live on Wilson's Road, which is very near Atwood. So I have the opportunity to witness things of this nature. And Mary, your story was of a car slowly turning a corner, perhaps out of a driveway.
Yes.
With bicycling. So buses are not the only hazard on Atwood. It is a high traffic area with no pedestrian sidewalk. We are very grateful for the crossing guards, but that is not the only area that is tricky for students.
So several of us are smiling at this point, but there is nothing funny about this, and we will not share the address of that car or that license plate. Okay, and hopefully they are much more careful at this point, as we all need to be.
Can I just add some more things about Oak Grove had another question.
This is Mary Kaufman. Yes.
Yes, sorry. And if you hear Charlie, he's over here having dinner with me. One question that came up, we talked about the budget yesterday at the Oak Grove Leadership Council meeting, and there was a question actually from Liz about whether we talked about how the final budget is voted on and whether or not the 16-year-olds who are registered to vote in the town of Brattleboro are allowed to vote at that budget vote, thinking that it is their school and their potential budget. So that was just a question we had.
Okay, and you're talking about the annual town meeting having to do with the school budget. Yes, in March. Okay. Sean, do you want to address that?
I think there might be a complication because Brattleboro is the town that allows, gives students or people up to age 16 to vote. But Guilford, Putney, and Thomaston do not. So I don't think it would be a possibility. Okay. Because it's a unified district of 4 towns.
All right. Thank you, Sean. Ruby.
I would share a different opinion of that, which is that I think that ultimately we're a unified district, but each of the town clerks holds the voter rolls and uses those to base their entry into the annual meeting, which is who votes in the annual meeting. And so I think it's really up to the town clerks to assert who should be in that room. I think that we would have to actually actively say 18 and older are the only voters. But in my opinion, if the Brattleboro community has said that 16-year-olds can vote in their general election, then I don't see any reason to impose a different view. That's my opinion.
So it seems to me that's something that the central office needs to look into. Okay, thank you. So Nancy? I see your hand
Sorry,
up.
I
Weiss.
put my hand back down because we kind of moved on, but I'm just going to say the other concern I have about Atwood Street is the speed at which people travel on that street. It's concerning for students who are out there, but it's also concerning because some of those people who are traveling at a high rate of speed are students, as well as community members. And so I have asked the Brattleboro Police to set up a speed check for that area. And I would strongly encourage anybody who sees anything that's unsafe to please call the police dispatch, the non-emergency number, and just reiterate that because the police are very busy and I'm sure they forget about it. But I just worry that somebody's going to really get hurt out
Yeah,
there.
I think it's very serious. Yes. Thank you, Nancy, for that. I just want to go back. I see Liz Strong's hand and Tim's again, but Mary raised 2 points, I think, in what she said. One, to what extent can 16-year-olds vote in March? And I think there was another question about the process of how we vote on the budget. Is that correct, Mary?
No, we talked a little bit about the process at the Oak Grove Leadership Council meeting, and really that it's a floor vote. And so talking about how to get everybody there, and it came up about the 16-year-olds because we do vote at the high school, so they would be students there. And was that a possibility?
Okay, thank you, Mary.
I'm sure more might come up in the future, but that's all for now.
We are going into budgetary season.
That's right.
Tim, you had your hand up again?
Yeah, to pass on one more request from a parent at Oak Grove. She asked if there could be childcare for parents who come to board meetings.
Childcare for parents who come to a board meeting such as this. And that's an interesting proposition. And again, I think that is a central office concern that needs to be worked out, since it is the central office that provides the means for us to hold meetings. So I'm going to ask Mark to look into that, the possibility of that. Thank you. Matt Shibley.
Yeah, so give you an update from Green Street's Leadership Council. Kate did a really great job talking about Green Street's commitment to the continuous improvement plan goals and how we were specifically looking at those. I'm really impressed by the professional development they're doing, and specifically the efforts around increased sense of belonging. We also had a really great conversation about family engagement, how to increase family engagement at Green Street, and the budget, taking a look, consideration, discussions about that. So again, I think that a great place for the community to engage in discussions about the budget and have those tough conversations would be at Leadership Council. So just really proud of Green Street.
I also want to say a great place for the public to engage in this conversation is at a board meeting, such as this one, as well as at a finance committee meeting. And whether the timing is convenient or not, in both situations, these meetings are recorded. They can be viewed online and comments can be sent in via email. Okay. Kim Price.
Putney, we had a great meeting. There were lots of new parents there, so there was fairly large turnout, which was nice. And John gave an overview of the budget for Putney, so I want to discuss that a little bit. Liz did bring up the question, possibility of student reps on Leadership Council. So,
okay. Thank you. The possibility of student reps on leadership councils. I think we talked about that in policy at one point. And if that is of interest, we can readdress it because the policy would have to be adjusted
Right.
somewhat. Okay. All right. Anybody else? Leadership Council updates. All right. Board subcommittees. Anything to report in that regard? Okay, moving right along. Let's go to letter C as in Charlie, which is a discussion about the Student Advisory Committee, not council, but committee, SAC, as it exists in relation to other student groups at the high school. So it's open for discussion. Ruby.
So this issue came up at a BUHS Leadership Council. I think it was either at the end of last year, must have been at the end of last year, maybe at the beginning of this year. And I think that there was an acknowledgement of a little bit of confusion around the different ways that students could get involved. There was the Student Advisory Council or committee or whatever it is, and the Student Council, and I don't know what other opportunities there were. And there was a little bit of confusion about why would one person be on one and the other, and then would the elected or appointed representative also be on the Student Advisory Council? I think that the overall feeling, there were two takeaways, and anyone else who was there can chime in. I think one was just feeling like it would be helpful to have there be some staff understanding of what was happening in the Student Advisory Council, or staff understanding what was being conveyed, so that when information came back, either via the student rep in this space or in some other capacity, it was felt more of a collaborative, they understood what was happening rather than kind of it being out of left field. So I think that was one comment. And then I think the other one has been addressed, which was at the time that we discussed it, I don't think there was a real explicit expectation that the appointed student advisory or this representative to the board would be asked to participate in the Student Advisory Council. And I think that now is the case.
That has come up. The problem with, I think there's a bit of a glitch, and that is, we know when our board meetings are, the second and the fourth Tuesday. We do not know when the Student Advisory Committee meets. It is a drop-in session. It's ad hoc. It has no membership, and it's going. We can't decide on, let's say, the third Thursday of every month, because we're dealing with students who have sports or theater or music, and that's a changing environment for students. So from session to session, at the end of the meeting, we sort of do a poll and say, what looks good for the next meeting? I do believe we are meeting again on November 1. Is that correct?
Yeah.
November 1 from 5 to 7, which is typically the time we meet. Okay.
That's a Friday.
And that's a Friday. Yes. And that was, yes, it was a wow. It's a wow day. And I think it was last year or the year before, the group never wanted to meet on a Friday, but we're going to meet when it's convenient for the majority of people. Mm-hmm. So I don't see how we can say it is a guarantee that the student reps at this board will automatically be able to make every SAC meeting. But there is a commitment and certainly a presence at the last meeting. So, which is great. Hannah.
Have you ever considered doing it in the during the day, like during the ACE time, so all students had access? As like a rotating thing. Like I know the nighttime meetings are important and longer, but just to like have more student participation and voice. I wonder if you have a cohort that's meeting regularly, that cohort could create the ACE during the day that either you and or Tim could potentially be at to, because I think a lot of students, and we've had this conversation, like a lot of students don't know that it exists or what it does or how to use it. So I just wonder how to get it more.
I think that's a great idea.
Spread out through the student body.
Okay. I think that's
40 minutes.
40 minutes only? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if students have sea lunch, it could be an hour and 10 minutes.
But even at 40 minutes, let's say, to do it, it gets the word out for people to be on the alert for an early evening meeting as well. A way of advertising. Okay.
It could be like an agenda, like here's topics we're discussing. If you'd like to come share your whatever.
I think that's great. I did pull the BUHS Leadership Council notes having to do with SAC, September 3rd. Okay, it was early this year, at the very beginning of the school year. Other comments, concerns? I think we want to really stress, this is not a student council. This is an opportunity for students to gather, to talk about critical issues. And I know that I've shared certainly with Cassie and with Tracy, and probably with you, Hannah, as well, that when something critical comes up, we will alert you to that immediately.
I think the other thing to add too is there's lots of kind of student leadership groups within UHS that are all different and doing different and similar things depending upon the time. Like yesterday, I was invited to a youth meeting because they wanted to discuss our student safety team and how they're, used and how students know who they are and when to go to them. And that's a completely different group, and that's run by Ricky Davidson. And then I have the student safety group that I meet with. And so it's just, there's a student council, there's a lot of pockets and opportunities for students to kind of share and use their voice in the building.
I think that's great. I think the more opportunities, the better for students to come together. I know that the description of the Student Advisory Committee, the first year was that it's an eclectic group. And students were saying that they would never have come together as the group, but for the SAC. And the bonding that takes place was extraordinary. Ruby.
My recollection from the BUHS Leadership Council conversation was that there was a recommendation or a thought that I actually think is really for central office or for Hannah, that an infographic or some visual representation that helped to lay out like the different ways kids could like dive in and get engaged might be a helpful tool. Particularly, it sounded like, I don't know where you're at with the student council, sounded like was in a little bit of a changing moment. And so that's an opportunity kind of to take advantage of that change to see how are we presenting, these opportunities.
And I think that happens at the club fair, which was a couple of weeks ago, where all these different tables are set up with all the different clubs and organizations. And it might be interesting to have SAC moving forward to have a table there, which I don't think they have historically. I don't think so. And that's where every student in the building walks through and can sign up and get information and then be on the email chain for the different organizations and groups that are happening within the building. And they're all listed on the website. So people are able to access them that way too.
I think these are great suggestions. We have to remember them. Eva, you have your hand up. Eva Nolan.
I was just curious about the student safety group. Is this a new group? Is this something that has could you give me some highlights about it? Because it sounds very interesting.
Thanks. This is a group that came out of 2 falls ago when we had a couple overdoses, and students were very upset about what was happening within the building and what they didn't have control over, and wanting to take more part in finding solutions to the issues. I put an email out to every student in the building and just said, anyone that's interested in joining is welcome. And I had about 15 people respond, and that's where it stems from. Mm-hmm. And it's student led. I started taking a back seat to it and just kind of being in the space, and they take their own notes and have their own Google Classroom set up, and they went with it.
Thank you. That's amazing. That is amazing work. Thank you so much for creating that space, Hannah.
Yeah. My pleasure.
Any other comments or questions about the Student Advisory Committee? And I'm trying to say committee in a very pointed way, as again saying Student Advisory Council, which sounds like Student Council. So we're very careful to stay away from council. Any other questions or concerns about the SAC? Okay. Thank you. Thank you. All right. We're up to letter D, which is to explore the content of the monthly report that we get, which is provides an update about what's going on at every school, and what kind of data is contained within it. So, open for discussion. I have my notes, remembering what people have said in the past, but Tim, why don't you start us off?
Yeah, so this goes back to April. Ruby and I and others talked about how to inform the board fully about the state of health and safety in the schools. One suggestion was to include incident reports in the report. Now, some of you know that it's in Vermont state law, 16 VSA, subsection 570, A, B, C, D, and E. The schools formally report incidents of harassment, hazing, bullying, and so on. I think that it would be advantageous to the board to, when we get the board reports, to know how many incidents have there been in the various schools in each of these categories. It's just important data to gauge the health and safety of schools, and also to see if things are getting better or worse over the year.
Okay. Thank you. Would anyone else like to add to this?
Share a thought. I know this came up last year. I remember Matt brought this up at a meeting, and
Actually,
yes.
Oh, okay.
So I did consult with council around a regular report out, like in terms of a monthly report out. And the concern is that data could very much be identifiable by student and families. So that was not a recommendation for a regular monthly report. But we could think about scheduling more of like a summative report mid-year, end of year as a school district.
That might be a good idea, like a mid-year summative report to see just what we look like overall as a district, rather than breaking it down by school site, and then see how that data sits with us. How does that sound as a way to begin? Matt?
we could include in that data the number of physical interventions as well. I would certainly be interested in that data.
Okay.
Restraints and that, you mean like,
I'm sorry, I can't hear from this end.
sorry, I just didn't know what you meant by physical interventions. If you were talking
Seclusions
about
and or
restraints.
restraints, yeah.
Policy that we are currently looking at in committee, right? The other issue that I've seen in notes as board members have sent them to me, issues of suspensions. And then I also saw restorative justice meetings. And just to see what the data looks like. And it also goes to the issue of bullying and harassment, which is an interesting one. It's I remember from an SU meeting, it's a very tight definition of what constitutes bullying. And maybe we need to broaden it out a little bit. Don't know.
I think regular reporting of suspensions would also be very much identifiable. It's not something we like to do. Restorative justice circles happen, I think, fairly routinely in all of our schools. Maybe there are some slight variances, but that's certainly a topic we could bring to the forefront. Maybe not a regular monthly meeting, but like a maybe find time for in one of our future presentations.
Yeah, I think so. And if it is summative, as you've said, so that it's not identifiable by school site. I think we need to be very careful about that. Ruby?
I think that overall, I think that the reports have gotten more and more consistent over the years. And there were, I just looked at the most recent one, and there are oftentimes errors in the form that frustrate me, so like it's no one's fault. It's just kind of one of the cells doesn't add properly or is a percentage and shouldn't be. And little things like that. And that's tightening up, and that's great. But when I think about the report that we receive monthly, and what are we doing with it? I don't really know the answer. And I, as I think everybody knows, I really like trend information. So the summative approach is really helpful, so looking at, it is good to get each month what's going on at each of our schools, but what is the picture as it flows through the year, and what is it, how do we visually see it like across the district from school to school? And I do think, and I really appreciate and value that our central office is being mindful of just not, being careful about not having identifiable information. But I do think that there are ways that we can look and think critically about how are things going at our schools. And I think this data is a big piece of that. So, so I would just encourage, this particular tool to evolve further in those directions. I also just want to put my own pitch that I would find it very helpful to have the superintendent's kind of like a narrative piece alongside that data, maybe not in every month, but if there was a summative moment, have a much a beefier kind of superintendent narrative that helps us as a board to kind of chew on that data a little bit more, kind of with more teeth.
Yeah, almost like a State of the Union for our school district. Right.
That'd be helpful.
Evaluative. Sean?
I was just wondering how the generation of the material, how it is generated to go into the monthly report. I also agree with what was said, that there seem to be discrepancies in it. And also the superintendent report in September was couple of pages, and it went into great detail on a lot of different things. So, and the Leadership Council, it looks like boilerplate questions, and very often they're blank, which probably indicates that the Leadership Councils have not met, which is, I don't think there should be any punitive, ramifications as far as that goes.
So it is boilerplate, those 3 or 4 questions, those 3 or 4 moments. And it's done specifically that way. And it was designed so that to generate true communication from the Leadership Council to the school board. It is not indicative of whether the Leadership Council is meeting. It's absolutely not indicative of that. So when you go through the various agendas and minutes of Leadership Councils, there isn't always a need to share something with the board, but they are meeting. So I certainly know that as I look at this and assess it. Matt.
To riff a little bit on Sean's statement, I do find on the updates, the Leadership Council questions to be a bit duplicative. And I wonder, the story I tell myself was that perhaps those were in place before we had real committed attendance and assignment of board members. I could be mistaken in that understanding. So certainly open to correction. But I feel like right now we've got really great attendance from board at the Leadership Councils and have a really great organic back and forth between the board and Leadership Council. So again, I think perhaps those questions might be duplicative.
So I recall when these questions were established. So it's relatively new. It's definitely within the last 2.5 years. And maybe it is exactly that. And it's sort of spurring different ways that individuals can think about issues that they might want to share. I know that I've certainly brought, it was week after week, the issues coming out of Dummerston having to do with a lack of substitute teachers. This was going on last year, right? I'm not hearing that this year, which I guess is a good thing. Yes, it's a very good thing. The
questions were developed to be pretty open-ended so that the Leadership Councils could kind of run with them in terms of how much information they want to provide or how many questions they want to ask. So I would say each individual Leadership Council, take those questions and make them yours in terms of what you want to communicate back to the board or the community.
It seems to me we generated these questions coming out of policy, the policy committee, just to make sure there was real communication going on. It's a two-way street. Okay. So Tim and then Sean.
Yeah, getting back to the incident reports, I don't see how reporting, say, bi-monthly, that there's 10 or 7 incidents at a particular school is revealing any personal information. I've never gotten that point.
It might.
I would disagree.
It might. What if there are only 2 incidents at a school? Everybody will know. And the other thing that happens.
But if everybody knows that's an incident, it's reported.
Not everybody does know.
Yeah.
Not everybody who comes to these meetings.
And just because it might go through the student grapevine, perhaps known as social media, doesn't mean that it should come before a public board meeting or be in, at least that's my understanding of the way the school functions. I think we should go with this mid-year summation and see what Tim.
Yeah, I disagree. I would like quarterly and I would like it by school and not by district. And I would add that this is not a new idea. We first came across this when we had our retreat at Oak Grove School, when we had all those examples of information from other schools. We saw a health and safety report from a school in northern Vermont, and it had incidents and breaking down the instance. There's no problem there with that school. So this is not a new idea. I still don't see how enumerating the number of incidents at a particular school is going to harm an individual. I would be the last one to want to harm any individuals or reveal any information.
So I hear the concern, and I'm wondering, as you gather the information by school, to take a look at it by school site and see what it looks like and see how revealing it is. And it might be something that we might want to take a look at in executive session, and to have a discussion in executive session. That might be a way to go. I said Sean, and then I'll come around. Yes, and I see a number of hands up right now. Yes, Sean.
I just go back to my original question. I was wondering, you have the school, and then you have, I think the first thing is a number of pupils in the school, and then attendance data and all these different things. Who actually submits that, and where does it go to?
Combination of, go ahead, Julie.
No, go ahead.
All right. Well, each school submits that information to Mohart, who compiles it in that one presentation that goes to the school board members. And at each school site, I think it's varying how they collect that information, but principals take a lead and admin assistants take a lead to help facilitate getting that information collected in a timely manner so that it's in your inbox by the Thursday before the following Tuesday board meeting.
So it's like admin assistant, school nurse, principal, facilities manager are the 4 people involved at Dummerston.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But as you know, schools are like moving parts. I mean, they're very busy places, and to regularly collect and take this information, organize it, and get it to you almost a week before the meeting may sound easy or look easy, but it's not. People are very busy, and it takes time to collect the information.
Do you think the value is greater than the work?
I think it's valuable information, and I think you can, if you look at it from the beginning of the year, the through line to the end of the year, you can see a story there. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think it might be interesting to reconfigure the report. And if we're doing a summation, it will look very different. And then we can actually see the trend. Because the only way to actually see the trend is to look at it on a month by month basis, I think, at this point, the way it's constructed. There is a board member with a hand up, and then I'll come around. Eva? Oh, did you put your hand down?
Yeah, I guess
Okay.
there's just a little bit of confusion on my part. So what we're talking about with the incidences per school, we are saying that if that was to be revealed, it would be easily identifiable information.
Yes.
Is there? Okay, so is there a possibility for just the board to get just that information?
Well, that's something that I just raised, that if we are going to get that information, and we might want to get it to then think about how it sits with us. But the only way that we could take a look at that information would be to go into executive session and look at it. And that prevents any possibility of identification. And it would have to be an executive session. That's not a judgment that can be made beforehand. If it is on a month by month basis, it might be even important to do it with a mid-year report. That it's, I would think that with a mid-year report, we want to do it in executive session and have a candid conversation about what the data looks like. And to what extent is it revealing? Even with a mid-year report. Mid-year, this is already November, so we're almost there right now to see something. Okay. There are a number of hands up, Ruby, and then I'm going to wrap around.
Just to reflect on what you've just said, in my opinion, if it's a mid-year or multi-month summative report, I think it would be important to have that not an executive session. I think that conversation, unless there's a reason that we're concerned about identifying information, I think that the conversation needs to happen, and we can have it as candidly as possible. But it's something that the public should participate in my opinion.
I think it's a murky area, and I don't know that we can make that determination that first go round. So I'm wondering, in that first go round, to protect the data, we do it in executive session, and then make a determination from there. Does that sound okay? Yeah. Okay. Nancy, you have your hand up.
Sorry, I just want to say that I think it's really important that now my timer's going off, that we protect the rights of our students and the privacy of our students. Kids make mistakes, and I think we all know that, and adults make mistakes too. And I think we just need to be really protective of that information. And I want to make sure that we are honoring the fact that we hope students, when they make a mistake, learn from it and don't make the same mistake again. So I would just encourage the board to be extra super cautious about, what do we do? How do we view this information? How do we share this information? I think it's really important information to look at, but I think, looking at it as a summative, either on a twice a year situation, or even if we do it once a year. And then if you feel like you need to ask questions that are more personal or might reveal data, you could always ask for an executive session at the next meeting.
Thank you, Nancy. Thank you. Kate.
Hi, I appreciate this conversation around this data, as it's important data to look at. We look at it all the time as administrators to make decisions for our children and the safety of our schools. And so I missed it, but I'm just clarifying, and maybe Tim can answer this. What would be the purpose or goal in collecting individual school data versus if it came in as a district and more of a collective? And is there a difference in that purpose? That I just wanted some clarity on that.
Yeah, so the board has a sense of the health and safety situation at that school.
I am concerned that just looking at that data alone doesn't give the full picture of whether or not a school is safe or not. So I would just throw that caution out there.
No, you're right. But if we see like a really big uptick in the number of incidents, well, that's a red flag. So we investigate it further.
I think it's all pieces of data that come together to form a complete picture. And I think we all hear very clearly what you're saying, and what you're saying, Nancy, that we have to be careful about how we use the data and what kinds of decisions we make. I really don't think that, and let me retract what I just said. There are no decisions. It's just having as much data as possible to get a full picture.
Okay.
Let's see what it looks like.
Sure. I'm concerned about Tim's use of the word investigate what that might look like. And so that is all I was looking for, some clarification, because we always have a purpose for collecting data. So I was just wondering what your purpose may be and how it differed from collecting it as a whole.
Well, it just gets back to, we're always trying to improve, all of us. And we can't improve unless we measure. And I agree with Ruby that trend analysis is really important. So if we want to see that our district and our schools are getting better, we need data to show that.
Okay, I'm going to call on Thea.
I think that I agree that it's important to hear, for at least for the board to know the number in each individual school. But I also think maybe it's better to not have the public know each individual numbers like in close succession monthly. Because as a student who hears gossip, like if there's like 2 incidents, like you can figure out who that is.
Right. That's the big concern. Yes. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you. Liz Strong.
I also wanted to briefly voice my support for protecting this data and erring on the side of caution. I think the actions of another school district are not evidence that it is safe and responsible to release potentially identifiable information in a more granular way.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we're going to be very, very careful about how we proceed with this. And I think it, at least initially, definitely needs to be in executive session, how we have this discussion. Hannah. Parker.
Yes. I just wanted to go back some of the data. I think that when we're looking at the attendance numbers, because Tim had reached out to see what the BUHS average daily attendance was. So I did some digging. And I think as schools are reporting out, I don't know that schools are reporting the same content base. So like, I don't know if one school to another is actually a comparison or not. And so what I found out today is when BUHS is submitting that, they're submitting it for students who are there for half a day, for more than half of their school day, which isn't really giving you the picture of what is happening at BUHS. And so I had them do a report just on a random school day of every block, and that had about a 5% absence rate. So, which looks very different than what you're seeing on your reports. And so if students are leaving early for sports reasons, or they have doctor's appointments or dentists, or they come into school late for some reason, like that's all showing up as a just absence when we're reporting it. So we're looking into figuring out how to change that so it's more accurate data. But because BUHS doesn't do a daily attendance for the whole day, it's by class, it's very skewed data.
Thank you. That certainly helps to better understand your numbers for BUHS. Yes. Okay. Ruby, you had your hand up. You're okay.
Moved on, yeah.
All right. Sean.
You know, that really clarifies a lot, because I look at those numbers and I think, wow, how can this be what it is at one school? And so I think for me, it goes back to the importance of the administrators' positions in the schools. And they're the ones that deal with infractions of all natures. So, and then it does come to the board if it ends up being an egregious, something that has to be dealt with. And then we work on it collaboratively. But there's so many things every day that is done at a really administrator or a principal level that, you know, I don't personally see the value in highlighting schools. You know, it easily could be injurious.
So thank you very much. This has been an interesting conversation, and we'll pull it together and take it to the next level, and with Mark's assistance. Thank you. I'm going to move on. An update on our next board retreat. The doodle that's out there, and I've sort of checked in with individuals. We have a date at this point, and that is November 18, Monday. Monday, November 18. Please save the date. This is for board members and for Mark Spino? Are you good for November 18th? Okay, thank you very much. All right. Location to be announced. It will be from 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. Okay, thank you. Other business? Moving on, other business. I noticed something regarding other business, having to do with the Regional Career Center. Nancy, are you aware of this? The University of Vermont, that one of your staff members has been nominated for a 2024 Outstanding Educator Award.
Yes, I'm very aware. Her name is Linda Alvarez. She's our business teacher. She is a rock star. I actually employ both she and her husband, who is our criminal justice teacher. So they will both be out on the day of the ceremony because I want to make sure that he can join her in this important event. And I'm thrilled. I am very excited for her. She is really an outstanding teacher and greatly deserves this award.
Well, congratulations to Linda Alvarez. And the date is Thursday, November 7th, for this presentation, for this ceremony. Yes. So lovely news. And it is now 7:06, and we are going to go into the administrative report. There is a administrative report.
Can I just add one more thing? I just wanted to let you guys know that we've had several students lately who have won awards, and I put it in my I try and put it in my monthly report, and I've put it in the newsletter. I just want to make the board aware that some of those students are from Brattleboro or from Windham region, or some of those students are from Windham Southeast School District, but others are from other schools in the area. And I just want you to know that we are attracting some unbelievably talented students. And I think the board should really take pride in that.
Thank you, Nancy. Thank you. Moving on to the first part of the administrative report, leadership council members by school site.
I don't have the link in front of me, but if somebody wouldn't mind reading off those names for me. Thank you.
I have. Did you have it? Okay, go for it.
Okay, thank you.
So do you want me to just start for BUHS? You want me to read all the names?
Yeah, let's do it all.
And my apologies if I get them wrong. Melissa Mezqua, Stephanie Bonin, Sharon Carlton Newton, Ricky Davidson, Maureen Gallagher, Laura Howe, Ruby McAdoo, Ann Parker, and Dr. Liz Richards.
Should we do the entire, let's do everything. So could you just name the school and then just go through it quickly, please?
Yeah, so I'll go as quickly as possible. For BAM's Leadership Council, Faith Bluen, Kelly Brown, Mariah Carney, Mariah Henry, Alex Joyle, Sylvania Curlin Smith, Rich Levy, Keith Lyman, Tim Maciel, Sean McGee, and Matt Shibley. For Academy, we have Wakana Aguilar, thank you. Mariah Carney, Kelly Diaz, Orly Hasbani, Alex Joyle, Alicia Hell, Jody Matulke, Emily Magus Russell, Abby Manukin, thank you. Gwyneth Mogg Hall, Shauna Morris, Colleen Savage, and Nina Wilson. For Green Street, we have Lauren Brown, Christina Howe, Sylvania Curlin-Smith, Matt Shibley, and Aaron Wiesel. For Oak Grove, we have Grace Freeman, Mary Kaufman, Emily Lenclo, Eva Nolan, and Liz Strong. For Dummerston, we have Christine Brickholt, Rick Breik, Julian Egan, Daniel Gehring, Maeve Jenks, Kimberly Lane, Michelle Lucian Green, Lance Nieper, Jessica Nelson, Molly Oglesby, Caroline Picker, Ellen Rago, Deborah Stanford, Hannah Van Loon, Emily Wagner, Melissa White, and Carmen Winchester. For Guilford, we have Jamie Durham, John Gagnon, Emma Hallowell, Sarah Landers, Kitsy LaRock, Jocelyn McIntyre, Josh Nelson, Caitlin Pearson, Brian Reamer, Michael Roberts, Sarah Rosso, Tasha Tillman. For Putney, we have Liz Adams, Emily Bristol, Lisa Chase, Nancy Gagnon, Steve Head, Chrissy Lee, Hannah Linder Finley, Ruby McAdoo, Carolyn Oliver, Anna Oliver, Karen Phillips, Hannah Pick, Kim O'Price, and Jesse Ridgway. And I think that's it. Apologies if I got anyone's name wrong. I'm so sorry in advance.
Thank you. Thank you. So at this point, this is the proposed membership for Leadership Council. Is there a motion?
So moved.
For a motion to
Pass
approve.
the slate as
Yes.
presented. Yeah.
Yes, to pass the slate as presented. And it's been seconded. Discussion. All those in, oh, so sorry, discussion.
I note that there are 8 leadership councils, and there are 2 others that are not listed. And so I just wanted you to kind of let us know what's the deal with EES and WRCC.
So WRCC has a regional advisory board that Nancy or Amy could speak to. And then EES has regular meetings with a board. I'm not sure who our board rep is for EES.
Me,
Eva.
No, it's even
is
over.
So those are in place, have been in place for many years. So they don't have leadership councils.
So as we think about how we engage with those existing groups, I think that the only space that we have is like they take the space of leadership council in terms of how we engage. So I guess is there a reason not to have them identified in a similar fashion in terms of individuals that might be serving in that way? And this is just really me noting that those are 2 outliers. They're always they walk differently, in the world of leadership councils. But I do think if we're talking about how are we engaging with those communities, the leadership councils are our opportunity.
I don't think they're needed based on the regular community meetings that are in place with the RAB and then the EES meeting. But if Deb Gass is online or Nancy wants to speak to that, I don't want to speak for you.
See, Nancy has her hand up. Nancy?
I'm happy to speak to it. So I am required and have been for years, or tech centers are required and have been for years by law and regulation, both at the federal level and at the state level, to have a RAB board. And the RAB board membership is somewhat set by law, in that we serve a number of districts and we have to have representatives from all of those districts. And districts need to have equal representation. So we hopefully, although some years were more successful than others, have not only educators on the committee, but we also, or on the RAB board, but we also have parents hopefully we have business people, hopefully we have a number of community members. And so, and that board hears all of the same stuff that a leadership council hears. They're just set by a different set of policies than the district board is. So it would be a duplication to have a leadership council. And I have a hard enough time getting people from all over the county to come to the RAB board meeting. So getting them to come to 2 meetings, I think would, to 2 different groups would be really challenging. And I do try and make sure that we have representation across the board in that.
Thank you, Nancy.
No problem. And I suspect Deb Gass is in the same situation because she's also in a highly regulated setting.
Right. Thank you.
This is about the Career Center.
Please go ahead.
Nancy has also formed individual sort of informal leadership councils for each educational track. So electrics, forestry, culinary. So she's actually running a whole lot of leadership councils that are not formally established. When we established the leadership councils, the board agreed to use the RAB as the stand-in for the Career Center's leadership council.
Okay. And so Eva Nolan is the board representative to EES. And do we have a board representative to the regional center? Yes, that's what I thought. Okay. Ann Beekman. Okay. Thank you.
And may I?
Yes, go ahead.
Very briefly, and then I'll drop it. I think that the reason it keeps coming up for me is not because I think we should be adding more work or doing anything additional. It's really just that I know that there are individuals. I served last year on EES, and there are very hardworking individuals who are doing stuff. But it is required, and it has different rules, and so it's not us approving or not approving who's on. It's a public acknowledgement, and that group living in the same space as other leadership councils that we think about. So I think it's really just identification differently than we have done, and so I'd invite us to think about it that way.
Thank you. Eva, you have your hand up.
I just wanted to say that for the ES, it's called a policy meeting that they have once a month. But they do a lot of updates. And one thing that I always ask is, what would you like for me to bring back to the board? It is a well-oiled machine, and they do have. It's amazing the work that they do. My experience with ES is they're very appreciative that the board is there to hear all the updates and things that are going on, and communicating that at the board meeting to a broader public. So if there's anything that I could be doing better to reach out, please let me know.
Okay, thank you, Eva. Thank you. I am going to move on.
We need to vote.
Oh, thank you. We've had discussion. Yes, we're at discussion phase. Oh, I so appreciate that reminder. Okay. We have a motion. It's been seconded. All those in favor of approving the slate of Leadership Council members as read, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, the motion passes. Thank you very much. Good. Hires, resignations, retirements.
Yes, we have a new hire, Alex Joyle, for the Career Center in the Foundations course.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there a motion to approve this hire at the Regional Center, Alex Joyle?
So moved.
Thank you. Second? Discussion? All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, thank you very much. Any resignations or retirements? Okay. Welcome, Alex. And we are now up to this evening's presentation. It is, looking at the time, it is 7:20. I think we need to take a stretch break, 10 minutes, and we will come back at 7:30. One question, do we need access to the smart board?
We can set it up.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much. Okay. Thank you. It is 7:28. And I just want to say, in the interest of time, we will not address the fiscal report part of the agenda. There is nothing pertinent to be, there's always something pertinent having to do with budget, but we're about to head into budgetary season, so we're not going to address it this evening. Okay, thank you. All right. So we are looking at the presentation entitled Family Engagement. Thank you.
Okay, so yes, there's a group of us here tonight to present on family engagement, and I think we're going to start with some introductions, and then I'll do an overview, and we'll get the presentation started. You all know me, Mark Spino, superintendent. I'll pass it on to Rachel.
Glickman, I'm a teacher at Academy School. I'm also the parent family engagement liaison. And I just did a massive research project that touches on some of what we're going to talk about.
I'm Julianne Egan. I'm principal at Dummerston School and also served as curriculum coordinator and Title I coordinator.
And we also have some educators online who are joining us tonight. Janet, I'm going to start with you, then maybe kick it to Kelly and John if he's there.
Hi, I'm Janet Slazinski. I am the 7 through 12 curriculum coordinator, and I'm leading the work with the Portrait of a Graduate.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kelly Dias. I'm the principal at Academy School.
And John may not be online yet, but he will be joining us shortly. John Gagnon, principal of Guilford Central School. So our presentation tonight is focused on family engagement. This is a incredibly important topic and one that we're completely invested in always, but especially in these last few years coming out of the COVID pandemic. As you all know, we shut down schools in 2020. Our messaging as educators changed rapidly from come to our schools, you're a part of our building, our community, to sorry, you can't come in these buildings anymore due to safe and health reasons. And then, when we did come back into our schools full time, there was still that feeling in the air of, well, it's really not quite safe. Sorry, but no, we're being as safe as we possibly can. And then in the last 2 years, I think we're really starting to build back and rebuild where we were prior to COVID and hopefully beyond. But it's incredibly important work that needs to be intentional. There's layers to this work. We can't just expect parents to be present. We really have to be thoughtful about our approaches and how we engage with our parents and our greater community. So that's what I'm hoping you're going to glean from tonight's presentation. Some intentional decisions and moves that we're making to enhance family engagement. And as you know, on our continuous improvement plan, a sense of belonging is a major goal in our plan. And I feel this very strongly. If we have strong family engagement, our sense of belonging is going to be there at the rates that we want to see them. And really, we want 100%. That's the ideal goal. We want every child and every family member to feel connected to our schools. The reality is that is not in place right now, but that's what we're striving for. And to get there, we have to do the work. We have to be intentional and thoughtful about the work. So given that intro, I'm going to turn it over to Julianne.
Thanks. Thanks for having a conversation tonight about this topic. I could talk about this all day. This is such an important topic to me and something I love to talk and think about. So I will try to be brief and not so enthusiastic that I'm confusing. But I wanted to spend a little bit of time just laying out the theoretical framework for family engagement. And the why of it, and the research behind it, which Rachel's going to talk more about later. But we know from research that engaging families in schools leads to higher levels of student achievement. The interesting question about that research is like, why is that? What is it about that? Like, why would that lead to student learning? And, my understanding is when you look at the why of it, it's really about a positive association, as Mark was mentioning, a sense of connection, a sense of belonging. And families conveying that to their children, which then, creates this positive association with school, which then has an impact on how that student feels during the school day. So having positive feelings about school, talking about school at home positively, checking in about school, all of those actions that can happen at home are really powerful for the student. And so that's kind of the why of why we do this work. And also why it's not a one size fits all. It's not about just how many people showed up for this event or how many, curriculum nights did you have? It's really about what kind of relationships do you have with your families and how do you have systems in place that allow you to cultivate those relationships and how are those relationships reciprocal? So that's kind of the framework for why this is such an essential part of our work together. I think, at Demerson School and at other schools in the district, we have this concept and this belief and this vision that we are all learning together. So it's not about like, oh, here we are, teachers over here, and we're going to teach you students, or we're going to teach you families how to fill in the blank. We're all learning together. We're all building skills together. We are learning about each other together. And that's the magic of it. And that's the love that's in schools, is that relationship building. So we know, just like when we work in our school communities and with our students, we know that all individuals who are in the learning community and who are learners, which is all of us, we all need to experience relationship. We need to experience challenge. We need to experience autonomy, and we need to have fun to thrive in a learning community and to feel like I want to be at that place. That's a place that's really, my brain lights up when I go to that place. And that will happen for a student, and it will happen for a family member, and it happens for us as staff as well. Like, my brain is lighting up here. Those are the places you want to be. Those are the places that are exciting. So there's different layers to that then, therefore. And a huge part of family engagement is fun. And people knowing us, knowing each other, us knowing families, families knowing us as human beings. That's a huge piece of how we come together. It's not about me telling you every single thing you need to know about your child and telling you all the thing, like here's a giant packet of data for you to look at, or a giant packet of math skills for you to work on, or here's how to do this. It's about how, we are two human beings who love the same person. And so how do we have a relationship together to support that child in reaching like their fullest potential? And we're going to have fun while we do it. It's going to be fun along the way. And I'm really going to get to enjoy knowing you, and you as part of my school community, you're making it richer just by being here. So that's the piece of the fun. At Emerson School, we have layers of fun. We get together and have play games, with our families, have events that are really, the purpose is just having time together, quality time together. Next week, we're going to walk the trails. The kids are going to put pumpkins out, and we're going to go out and walk the trails with families in the evening. And so that's an example of just like a fun activity building that sense of belonging. That builds relationship, which comes from fun, but also a lot of the work we do with families is intentional in how we build relationships. So at Dummerston School, for example, we have a little alternative to the PTFO. We have a family involvement team that each class has a representative, a liaison to that team. And their goal is forming attachment between families and the school. So they work on that, they meet and create that connection among our school. Student-led conferences, another piece of, we want 100% of students to lead their family through a discussion of their learning. And that happens pre-K to 8 at Dummerston. That is bringing in families for something that builds that personal relationship. We want to challenge people, right? So we want to have people, we need people. So we have families at all of the schools. It's incredible what families do at these different schools, like the challenging projects that they put together, fundraising campaigns, volunteer work days, all of those things bring people together to like really, do something hard, because coming together and doing something hard together builds connection. And we want people to have autonomy. Like, it's not about, hey, you're going to do the thing and it's going to look exactly like this. It's about choice and your voice and all of us getting to know each other personally on a personal level. Here we are just doing our layers of engagement. But a couple of those pictures you can't tell are actually student-led conferences. The top two corners are a little what student-led conferences look like in the pre-K. The bottom middle is what a student-led conference looks like for a 7th grader. The to the right with our pavilion, that pavilion was built with a lot of volunteer effort from families really coming together to say, this is what we want here. We're coming together to create the kind of school we want to have. And children and families working together. If you are going to be a family at Dummerston School, you're going to spread mulch. That's a definite. So that's kind of the overview of like what one model looks like of how we touch on all these different layers in order to form these personal connections with our families, which we know then will, increase that positive association. Many of our schools in our district are Title I schools, and board members know that the Title I schools come with special requirements around engaging families for the same reasons, because we know, in terms of that connection between school achievement and family involvement, you will see a benefit across all categories. And so, we are required as a district with Title I schools to actually take a certain amount of that Title I budget and dedicate that toward events that bring in families, and to really oversee that, to make sure there's a school family compact in place, to have a family engagement coordinator like Rachel at each Title I school, to really make sure we're bringing that focus to the work. These slides just detail some of the other examples that fit into those layers from other schools. And so some of this is about routine and ritual. Routine and ritual is also so important for building relationships, predictable schedules, things you do every year. And when we had COVID, when we had to cancel those routines and rituals, it was devastating. I mean, for people and for our sense of isolation from each other. Because coming together for the fall open house, coming together for the ice cream social, coming together for the pumpkin walk, these are things that people look at as like I know this is coming. And then children do too. Children are like, this is happening? When is this? Because that's part of the ritual. And so running some of the same events that are predictable along with a variety of different things each year works really well for just keeping the engagement up.
Builds tradition.
Yes,
Yeah.
Traditions are huge. So, some of these examples around low, what we call, what I kind of think of as low stakes events as well. People don't feel comfortable or they don't want to, frankly, come to a curriculum night, right? Like we can think, oh my gosh, I got this great curriculum night. It's gonna be great. And you send out flyers and you send this out and then you don't get a good turnout. Well, there's a lot of reasons for that, right? Maybe it didn't speak to people or they weren't wanting to come. But when you can make events low stakes, accessible, hey, we're coming together to learn some math games. Hey, we're coming together to, have a board game night. We're coming together for a meet and greet.
Bingo.
These are like bingo night. These are things that are fun, that are accessible, and that do make a difference in terms of creating that attachment to school. So the welcome back ice cream social, those things are very accessible for people and then can actually result in people then being more open to other events that might be kind of like, oh, this topic, this is a hard one, but I feel enough trust that I can come and engage in a conversation about a hard topic.
Great.
Questions? Some of the recurring initiatives, like again, having a system that is accessible and people can predict. Here's some things I know are happening each month. So I'm able to plug myself in. I will say too, a lot of these events, I feel it like at Dummerston School and I know at the other schools as well. It feels like we've brought back really everything in person. And that feeling of being in person together for events, we had a safety day curriculum or safety curriculum night, last month at Dummerston School, had a small group of people come and meet in person, had some really powerful conversations that don't happen in such a rich way online. And so bringing people back in person has been a real priority the last couple of years. And, instead of always relying on, hey, well, we sent the email out, we posted on Facebook, we did all these things, getting back to some of the old fashioned, I picked up my phone, and I called a few people to say, I would love to see you there. Personal invitations and personal connections. These
Julia,
are just some, yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. Can I chime in on the recurring initiative briefly? Is that okay? I know it's hard. I'm sorry I'm on Zoom. I have a nasty cough and I don't want to cough on everybody. I had a nice conversation with our family education coordinator today, Jody Matulke, and we talk a lot about this topic, and we talked over some of the resources that our district offers today, and just in reflection prior to this meeting, thinking about our mission and vision of keeping equity at the forefront of all of our work together. And you might look at the list of on the previous slide where it said resources, getting glasses for kids, meeting some other medical needs, getting them help to get to appointments. You might say, well, school is really just doing a lot for them. Why isn't this being done outside of school? But it's truly connecting and engaging with the families too, because a lot of times parents had adverse experiences themselves at places like the doctor's office or the dentist. So they might not feel comfortable enrolling their child for medical attention. But when we can collaborate together and bring kids there from school and meet their families at the appointment, that can often open a door for the parents to then form a relationship with a community partner or a doctor and be involved in that way. So that's something that's been really important for all of us to do. Some of the other things that have made a huge impact, I think, on our community have been partnerships with the food bank and doing Veggie Van Go, which meets at BUHS Academy and the retreat now. It's sort of changed throughout the years, but again, kept us connected during COVID and connected through food. And again, might be easy to think, oh, it's just passing out food, but what it is something that brings people together. And it's a way to have conversations with families and talk about how to cook healthy meals and express needs that we might not know about, and then extend services and partnerships that way too. Some of these things that we think of as sort of auxiliary are really central to our focus. And one other thing I just want to make sure I talk about is the garden coordinators. I know that each school has a different experience, but it's been something that's been really impactful for many of us in terms of engaging with families and sharing recipes and getting kids cooking, which then leads to conversations at home about what they've made at school and can we make this at home, and sort of taking ownership of their health and nutrition that way, which has been really kind of neat. So just wanted to share that.
Thanks, Kelly. And these are just some of the events
Examples.
coming up.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think a lot of what you're saying is about that partnership that needs to exist between school and what happens at home. And if you don't have those at home committed to what's going on in school, you've got a big gap there. You got a problem. So that's what I'm hearing.
Can I ask a question? Sure. So I'm looking at this, the Vermont Agency of Education, AOE, has a family engagement self-assessment form, which lists various principles. Core principle number 6 is providing equity and access. And so it talks about educators are responsible for ensuring that every child and family has the opportunities they need to be successful, Under the elements which are measured, it says the school does take into account the historical context of where families may have strived or struggled, their current realities, and the desired future outcomes for their children. And it lists other very culturally specific elements to measure. With Academy having about, I understand from Rachel's work, about 10% former refugee kids in the school, it's becoming a very diverse, culturally diverse school. I wonder what efforts are made at Academy to connect with very culturally diverse families with very different cultural mores and goals for their children, perhaps.
Sure. I don't know if Kelly wants to speak to that or I should chime in, but I'll just say that we have an amazing team of multi-language learner teachers at our school who is working very closely with families. And one of the things that we've been pretty successful with is partnering with co-sponsors in the community who are organized through ECDC and the Refugee Resettlement Program. And those community partners have been really instrumental in helping families get settled, find housing, access to medical care, just getting all the necessary paperwork in place to get established in a new country and a new community. So it's a tremendous, as you can imagine, a tremendous amount of coordination and time to have that the staff at the school working with the families and the community partners to make sure that those families are getting the resources that they need access to, and doing it through translators and cultural liaisons that can help to make sure that that the communication is happening. I have a story actually just today. I have a student I work with who went to the eye doctor last spring, is incredibly nearsighted. And we still were like, where are the glasses? Where are the glasses? Yeah. So I reached out to the co-sponsors in the community and asked, and they're like, yep, this is the doctor we went to. Called the doctor, the glasses were there, no one had picked them up. So we went and picked up the glasses for the kids. So that's the kind of coordination that it takes to make sure that all these kids in our community are getting what they need to be successful in school.
How are they really difficult cultural conundrums handled, such as use of bathroom, dress, those types of things.
Yeah, I feel like our MLL, our multi-language learner and teachers could speak to that more specifically, but I know just generally at Academy School, we do a lot of work around just inclusivity and making sure that there's a culture of respect for people from all different backgrounds. And there's, we do lots of read alouds with kids. We talk about people from different backgrounds, religions, cultural context. And so I think it's actually not specific to the multilingual learner community. Right. It's really much more inclusive and holistic than that. And those students are part of the diversity that makes up our school.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
I would just add to that we use apps like WhatsApp sometimes to communicate with families if they don't have a US cell phone number yet, which oftentimes they don't for a while when they first move in. And so they're in constant communication with our MLL teachers that way about everything from pickup plans to winter clothing that they need. And then we found a platform called Some More that's a newsletter creation website, but you can translate into any language via that site. So we use that to put out our newsletter, and that way families can click easily on their home language and read it instead of us trying to figure out how to translate into every language, and then sometimes it doesn't quite translate the way it should. We also all got Microsoft Word for our computers because that can translate where Google can't into some of the languages that we have. So we try to put out like every flyer, every newsletter, every email to the community is able to be translated into all of our 14. We might be up to actually 15 or 16 languages now. We got some new students this week, but it's been a really exciting adventure, and I think has grown more than we ever thought it would. But it's exciting to see the kids acclimate. And just actually, speaking of community partners, had an opportunity yesterday. I was having lunch with 4 students who are newcomers, and where they're from, police are really scary. And so the police were visiting because a younger student at our school had earned a reward of a visit with the police cars. So we had 2 local officers here with 2 cars, and their lights were flashing, and they were letting the kids beep the horn, and it was really exciting. And the kids I was eating lunch with looked out the window and they said, "What's happening?" And they were nervous. And I said, let's go see, let's go look. And they were able to talk to the officers and ask some questions about the role of police officers in America. And it was just like one of those bridging the gap moments where you could see their tension ease as they were able to talk to them, and they'll come back and do another event with Deb Coombs and Heidi, our MLL teachers. But just the opportunities like that where we can introduce them to our community resources, and then when they see them around town, they can say hello instead of feeling that fear, are really important.
I wanted to add something. I volunteered at the West Academy camp, and I can confirm some of that the kids are very sweet and respectful. And I was with when I was volunteering, some of the teachers were teaching about the diversity and stuff, and the kids, they listen and they apply. So it's cute.
So I think we'll shift to some portrait of a graduate work.
Janet speaking about that. Great.
Yes, so the portrait of a graduate is something that the whole state is working towards developing, that each school district would have a portrait of a graduate. And the work also stemmed from our high school is going through its NEASC reaccreditation process, and they require schools to have a vision of a graduate. And as the high school was starting this process, they said, well, this really is bigger than just a high school idea. This is something that needs to be taken to the whole school district. So we have formed a steering committee to try to establish and gather the community of the support of the community to develop our portrait of a graduate. And so a portrait of a graduate, it is a series of qualities we're hoping to see in our graduates. And we want to get all the voices from the community involved in developing that portrait. So the process for this is kind of done in 4 stages. If you could go to the next slide. So right now we have a steering committee. We had our first meeting a couple of weeks ago. And through that meeting, we have developed a survey, which will go out to gather community input and feedback in the beginning of November. And so that puts us here at step 2. That's kind of where we're at in the process right now. And then we will gather this input from the community and then revise a little bit further. And then we'd like to host some focus groups in January or February. And then we'll take all that information to create our draft portrait of a graduate, again, get some more feedback, and then turn it into a finished product that should be ready by the spring of next year. So that is the process that we're going through right now. And we encourage people to be on the lookout for that survey in the first couple of weeks of November.
Thank you.
Thanks, Janet.
Okay, this is my part. So just to introduce myself again, I'm Rachel Glickman. I'm a teacher at Academy School. And I just wanted to start off by thanking the board and the teachers union and the administration for granting me a sabbatical last year when I was working on my doctorate, which I finished. Woohoo. So I have managed to condense a 200-page dissertation into 4 slides. So I'm sorry if the slides really tiny, but I can always give you more information if you need it. So obviously, for the purposes of this evening, I'm pulling out strands of the research that I did specifically around family engagement. And one of the main findings and recommendations that came out of my research was around community schools. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what community schools are as a research-based approach for engaging families. But just to give you a little bit of background, I did a qualitative study in 3 of the district's elementary schools this past school year. And community schools was one of the recommendations that came out of that. And just so you all understand what a community school is, it's the intentional and strategic and focused engagement with families. And I'll get a little bit more into the background of what we're doing or what Vermont's doing at a state level and even regionally and nationally. The research questions that drove this study was to really try to understand how educational priorities shifted with the onset of the pandemic and how teachers and other educators experienced that shift. And I really wanted to take an assets-based approach and focus on ideas and practices that came out of this incredibly tumultuous time that can improve the way our schools operate. So I will move on from here. Okay, so this is the part I have to apologize for because I know there's a lot of tiny font on there. But this is basically a summary of the research that I conducted. You'll see sort of on the left side of the graphic that school and home are more distinct. And so basically what I looked at, this is a conceptual framework for understanding how the relationship between school and home was impacted by the pandemic. So I basically looked at sort of these more traditional ideas of what's the responsibilities of school, what's the responsibilities of home. And of course, there were things that schools did prior to the pandemic, and some might say, well, shouldn't that be the family's responsibility and vice versa? But certainly with the onset of the pandemic, things became very, very muddy very quickly during that time. So I looked at some of the more foundational ideas around the purpose of school that fed into this division of responsibilities. And then you'll see where that convergence point is really when the pandemic hit. And there was this total collapse of what is the responsibility of school and what is the responsibility of home. Families were responsible for many aspects of educating their children. Schools became responsible for all kinds of public health responsibilities and meeting basic needs of families during a time when a lot of social services were completely shut down in our community. The good news is there were a lot of really innovative things that came out during that time. Teachers were doing, especially when we came back to school in a more hybrid context with small pods. Teachers were using all kinds of different alternative educational approaches to make sure that children who came back from the building felt really engaged and happy to be there, because that was the number one priority when students returned to school. But I just want to reiterate what Mark was saying is there was a complete breakdown. I mean, family engagement could not happen. We physically could not gather for a very long time. And it really broke a lot of bonds of trust. At first, there was very close communication between families and school, if possible. But then over time, a lot of those relationships were really damaged. So I wanted to focus on, well, what did we learn that we can help inform the ways that schools can operate and work better with families. So that's the summary of the whole dissertation right there.
It's a really cool slide.
Yeah. Okay, so this brings me to the community school piece of this. And so I just want to pull the camera back a little bit and talk about what community schools are and what's happening outside of our district. So there is actually an act that was signed into law in 2021 called the Vermont Community Schools Act. And I think it's interesting that not only was this passed by our legislators, but also signed by the governor, because there was a recognition that schools had taken on so much more than the original mandates of what schools were charged with. And so in order to do that effectively, it was recognized that schools really are resource hubs. They provide a whole range of services, and in order to do it in a really well coordinated way, you need to be very intentional and put resources behind coordinating those services. And it really addresses communities, especially like ours, that have very complex needs. And so I think this is why it's particularly applicable in our district. There are 5 pillars to the community school approach. I just want to highlight one of them is about active family and community engagement. And there were 5 different pilot programs that were started in 2021, all of which were in the central and northern part of the state of Vermont. They got ESSER grant money to start community school pilot programs. And so unfortunately, we were not part of that round, but there is going to be a new round of funding coming out by the AOE. And I'm hopeful if there's interest in this district that we might be able to go for that money as well. So that's what the community schools are about. And I did also want to reference the taxpayer who was here earlier talking about cutting school budgets and say this is grant money that's outside of our school budgets. So this is not going to increase the tax base. And really, it's about better coordinating services. So you don't have teachers like me running out during their lunch break to go pick up classes for kids, for example. So I don't think this is really creating more. It's about coordinating the work that we're already doing in a way that's more efficient and better serves families and children. So I just want to end this by highlighting what's already been done and where this might lead. So all of the family engagement liaisons, which we have at all the schools in the district, are currently implementing a family engagement plans in our own school buildings. Those of us who are Title I schools are using small budgets to do that. I also mentioned that there is a development grant to become a pilot program through a partnership between the Agency of Education and the University of Vermont, which is called the Catamount Community Schools Collaborative. And there's also other sources of money. Bernie Sanders' office has special funding requests that they've allocated specifically for innovation and improvements to educational services, and this certainly would fall under that as well. And there is a conference coming up in just a few weeks, which is for all the Northeastern Community School coordinators to come together in Philadelphia. And there's a team of researchers from UVM and the Agency of Education Vermont going down to that conference. And I was lucky to be invited to go to that as well. So I just wanted to present just a couple little pieces of the research that I did. And also just say that it was a phenomenal experience to have been granted the opportunity to really reflect on how the pandemic impacted our schools and talk to really amazing educators who had told me just incredible stories. One thing that came out of my research that I didn't anticipate was a lot of tears. A lot of people really didn't have an opportunity to really process what they had gone through during such a tumultuous time. And I think it was really important for people to have that opportunity to reflect and also think of what good might come out of this as well. Yeah. So I don't think we're going to do Q&A right now, but I have a full dissertation if you want to read it. I also have an article that's going to be published tomorrow in a journal on international alternatives in education. And so I can send that link around. It'll be like a Cliff Notes version.
Nice.
And move on.
Thank you.
And this presentation will be posted on the SU website. So if folks want to dig into Rachel's work, it'll be right there. That's
So
our overview.
Is this the title of your dissertation reflecting?
Yep,
Okay,
that's the full
got it.
dissertation. So if you
Great,
see it on the
thank you.
website, you can
Great.
yeah, go to the whole thing.
Yes, Tim, of course.
So this is an incredible privilege to have an experienced teacher who's also an educational researcher who also centered your dissertation research in 3 of our own schools. That's an incredible opportunity. And I know from reading your article that's going to come out tomorrow, you talk about such incredible opportunities for innovation, pedagogical innovations, connecting with the community, as you mentioned. I think it's really important for the board and the public to hear more of that about this. This has been a teaser that I really think it was important to really hear more about what you found. It's an opportunity we shouldn't pass up. So my proposal, I won't make an emotion. I'm urging the board to consider inviting Rachel back, perhaps in 2 months, to let us know how things have developed at Academy 1, but more importantly, what opportunities there are for growth, especially towards the community schools model for all the schools in our district.
I'd be happy to do that. And I'd just like to say, I think that our community specifically is really well positioned to take on some of this innovative work because we have such an abundance of an amazing community resources. And one thing that I know, I'm sure it's happening at other schools, but working at Academy, I know that we have reached out to a lot of community organizations just for enrichment opportunities, for example, and they just bend over backwards to engage our students in any way that they can. So that has taken the form of us going on field trips, them coming to us and as guest speakers, doing after school programs. And I think we're super fortunate in that way because there are a lot of really rich opportunities for our students in the community that sometimes they're connected outside of school. And we certainly do. I think all of our schools do a good job of trying to make those connections. But I do also think that part of what I found in my research is that overall, school staff feel a lot of responsibility to do everything for everybody and to be able to engage the community in such a way to take some of that off of school staff's shoulders so that the focus can be more on instruction and making the connections between academic learning and belonging in the community and really looking for that project-based learning and place-based learning that can go on that can make those connections between the curriculum and what's happening in our local areas. I think that would be really liberating for a lot of our school staff because right now people so desperately want to focus on teaching and learning the new curriculum and doing their jobs. But when you're, worried about your kid who doesn't have glasses, who needs to get their prescription filled, and we have social workers scrambling to make these things happen. But right now it's like, it's Band-Aids and putting out fires and plugging holes. And I think we're doing the best we possibly can with that, but doing it in a more coordinated way, I think is really going to benefit our staff and help retain our staff and certainly benefit the kids and families as well.
Thank you very, very much. Thank you. Ruby.
I think I'm really happy to see the community schools being focused in this presentation. It's been something that's come up in the Putney Central School Leadership Council and with John Sessions for, at least a few years. And we've had John and I have had deep conversations about what we as a Putney school, Putney Central School, how we identify and,
that was me.
That's okay. Okay, we're not part of that grant, or we're not the model, the models in the state, but that we see that actually we are surpassing the ones that were selected as models because I've actually yeah, I'm really interested in community schools. So I've looked at those models and I've looked at what they are. So I really, really appreciate your presentation and the work that you've done and that you're sharing it with the community. And I would love to see this be, a real center in the work of our district as a whole. But at the board level, it just feels like it is the linchpin from my perspective. So I'm very, very appreciative of your presentations. Thank you for everything.
Here.
I was very excited to discover this while I was doing my research because I didn't know about the law that had been passed. I didn't know about the funding of the private schools that were going on. So just the timeliness of having discovered all this while I was undertaking this research, the puzzle pieces kind of came together, and it really gave me a clear vision of how many of the other issues that had come out in the research that I was doing could be addressed through this approach. Not to say it's a panacea and it's going to fix everything, but it certainly is going to address a lot of the issues that the people that participated in my study had identified that needed addressing. So I think it's worth pursuing, certainly. Yeah.
Other comments? Eva Nolan?
So the motel voucher program, that was expired, and we have a lot more homelessness happening within our community of families, and also disabled people who are elderly. And I'm wondering what services, like where you see the community support with that, and what services are being available for these group of families.
Yeah, well, I know for some of the pilot programs that Ruby mentioned, they put a lot of effort into bringing services to the school and meeting families and kids where they're at, because those kids are enrolled in our schools, kids who unfortunately are couch surfing and living in various friends and families' households, if they're lucky enough to have that, and making sure that they're getting those basic needs beyond the housing crisis. Obviously, we can't solve that problem as a school district, but making sure that they're getting connected to those resources, because as we all know, it's really hard when you're in a position like that to make a bazillion appointments with 20 different social service agencies to go around and making sure you're getting the right vouchers and you have access to your EBT card. So a lot of times schools are used as a hub for families, especially families that are incredibly vulnerable, to access those kind of services. And I know, and I want to again reiterate, like, our schools are doing this. It's not, I'm not saying that, we're not filling these roles. I'm just saying we're filling it in a way where we're seeing a need, we're filling the need, but it's not necessarily in a coordinated way with our local social service agencies, many of whom I think are very willing to step up and work more in partnership with the local schools.
Right.
Like the hospital, for example, they would love to have a closer relationship with our local schools and even have health clinics at our schools. I know we do that with dental clinics and vision screenings, but there's other opportunities there.
Which is why the focus for tonight has been on family engagement, because when you have family engagement and strong connections with your students and your families, that's where it starts. That's where you can identify where the needs are and make those connections in the community. So I hope we'll talk about this throughout the school year, because our goal of sense of belonging for students is really more about community and a sense of belonging for families in the greater community to their schools.
As you described schools as a hub today, I think about the history of housing at one point, where in the city you had stoops, you had those stairs leading up into the building, and you had people in that building sitting on those stoops. And then, of course, the stoops were removed. So you lose that hub. You lose the hub of churches and community centers, which has significantly been reduced. And so it's schools. It's schools that are the hubs for communities and for neighborhoods, bringing them together and providing a variety of services that go beyond what we assume is the traditional role of a school. We're not there anymore. So this has been a very thoughtful, thorough presentation. Thank you very much. Yeah. Other comment?
Well, just one more.
Tim?
You wrote so eloquently about the various purposes of education, which I think would really behoove the board to consider perhaps at a retreat. But do you want to talk about the various purposes?
How much time do people have
to
talk about it? But
education for democracy, education for liberation, education for further the capitalist dream.
Right. Yeah, I mean, there is a whole chapter in my dissertation about sort of the different theoretical perspectives on the purpose of public education, specifically in the US, but I did set up that graphic kind of with these feeders of the foundational ideas around education for workforce preparation, which is based on human capital theory, and education for liberation, which is based on Freirean models and Freirean pedagogy about how through education we become more free and develop more sense of agency. And then, of course, John Dewey's philosophies around education for democracy and it being the cornerstone of civics and students learning what their place is in the community and what they can offer. So these are foundational. I think these very much have been in our system for a long time, but sort of what gets illuminated really depends on what angle you look at it from. And there was a lot of debate around this, especially during the time of the pandemic. And there was a whole New York Times op-ed section that came out with different people from different perspectives arguing, well, this is really what education should be. It should really just only be about academic instruction, or it really needs to be about developing students' sense of place in their communities and becoming engaged as active participants. So there was a lot of debate around that. And then the sort of outcome of the pandemic and some of the alternative educational approaches that a lot of educators had embraced during that time, when there was a lot of flexibility around how we best engage our students. There was all kinds of incredibly innovative things that were going on that had to do with like more liberatory ideas around education and education about unlearning some of the harmful ways that we operate in the world. And I saw that specifically around outdoor education, which was a big emphasis at Academy School, and I'm sure in other schools in our district that had that opportunity to use the outdoors during the time when that was the safest place to be, and really thinking about our relationship with our local environment and the impact that we have on that, and all kinds of incredible place-based education projects coming out about our waterways and how water moves through our communities, and flooding and the impact of climate change, and just all kinds of incredible work coming out of that time. And I wanted to make sure it was not only documented, but that it wasn't forgotten and lost, and that we remember that these are the kind of opportunities that stick with kids and really helps them develop that sense of belonging and sense of agency, that they can do something about these huge problems that we're faced with that can feel really alienating and make people feel, adults or children alike, pretty helpless. So I just wanted to make sure that that was not just documented, but also was not forgotten in other ways as well.
So we definitely need to invite you back. We need to do some reading and invite you back for an engaged discussion on so many of these issues. So thank you, Rachel, and thank you, Julianne and Janet and Kelly for your work, Mark as well. And it's not just the 4 or 5 of you. I realize you are the spokespeople for all this work that's going on behind the scenes. So thank you very, very much. This is great. I am going to continue to move through the agenda. At this point, we're not doing the fiscal report, as I said, and we will go to the consent agenda. If there is no objection, is there a motion to approve the minutes of October 7, 2024 and October 8, 2024? Thank you. Second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you. It passes. And as I look at the rest of the agenda, topics for new business, and any topic for unfinished business. I think we're ending certainly with a topic for new business and in the future. And there've been a number of issues that have come up at this meeting in terms of what the monthly reports look like, how we might consider them in the future, as well as ways for the SAC to branch out at BUHS. Thank you very much for those suggestions. And so much more. I don't mean to leave anything out in terms of spotting the highlights. If there is no further business this evening.
Madam Chair, there being no further business before this board, I move that we adjourn.
Second. Okay, any discussion? All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you very much. We are adjourned at 8:23.